You don't build a business, you build people, and people build businesses.
Tell me one thing that you would like to change about this industry.
इधर भी गधे हैं, उधर भी गधे हैं, जिधर देखो गधे ही गधे हैं. The best professionals are all self-taught. It's okay to make mistakes as long as you're making new ones. What Meta really wants you to do is sort of build your business around WhatsApp.
WhatsApp can be as effective as they could look at an Instagram or a Facebook.
The focus of WhatsApp is they want to kill SMS.
What is good advertising?
So it's why and how.
Tell me any campaign that you have done that has stood out and got great results.
I think the Allen campaign, I would say.
How do you get your first few clients?
We started out by asking the same to ourselves. How can we be the best agency on earth?
Hi Hetansh, thank you so much for being on Aleena Dissects.
Thanks, Aleena. The pleasure's mine.
Excited to be speaking to you about digital marketing, one of my favorite topics. So my first question has to be, you can tell us about like your background, what your education is, how you started in this industry.
So I've had a very unique educational background. I had sciences in my grade 9 and 10. Then I shifted to commerce. Then I did liberal arts.
Okay.
That's a 4-year course. And then finally I did MS in entrepreneurship from Babson College in Boston. And so after a bit of sciences, commerce, arts and MS in entrepreneurship, I think I was always interested in sort of writing. So that's where the interest in advertising also stems from. And then I remember, my friend and I were taking a walk at Times Square, and you had the biggest brands who'd advertised out there. And, one is in that age where you really don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So I just looked at those ads, and they were some of the biggest brands in the world. And, I just said, I can do better than that with my accumulated experience in advertising being 0 days. So then he said, okay, if you think you can do this, why don't you give it a shot? So I came back to India, and then we started this agency. And I think 6 months from that day, when we did our first print campaign, the brand that we were working for, a local brand, made us do 37 revisions. That's when I called up that friend and said, no, you know what, that advertising was really good. Now I know what it takes to really come out with a campaign.
I was going to ask you that when you said you looked at these ads and these billboards, what did you think you could do better?
What I thought we could maybe do better is to emphasize on why. Like, why is it that I need your product, and maybe communicate that in a very creative manner. So I just felt at times one of the two was missing.
Okay.
At that point in time, I obviously did not realize that this would eventually become a foundation that I would sort of build my advertising know-how on. But, eventually what I feel, even when I look at a lot of ads these days, I feel like if either of the two is missing, you feel like, it's there but still not there, or it can be a little better. So I probably think that was missing, or it was just arrogance at that age.
I like the honesty, but tell me that did education play a part, or did you think that, okay, maybe I need to get educated in this field before I start something?
I'll sort of break that in two parts. I think one belief that I have is nothing is random in life. So I think everything that happens for a reason, and life gives you what you need, not what you want. So I think in that sense, strictly from that sense, I feel all of the experiences that I had, whether it was education or otherwise, would have added to me being able to do this. But yes, I think my other answer to that would be maybe sort of having a more firmed up educational background just in marketing or advertising would have helped. But I still feel you learn the most on the job. So I think, when you interact with clients and with brand managers, and, you sort of have to navigate through complicated briefs and try and find results for brands, I think that's where you learn the most. So having that educational qualification, I'm sure, is a bonus, but I still feel the most that you do is you have to learn on the job. And I think there's a very interesting quote by Naval Ravikant on this. He says, the best professionals, even if they go to an educational institute, are all self-taught.
Yes.
So I think unless you sort of push yourself and learn it, I think that's the best learning.
I had the same opinion when I started. And but back then, in the time that we started, I don't think there was formal education for what we were doing, right? Because when Instagram came out, nobody was teaching how do you do Instagram. It was
Right.
something that we had to learn on our own. I remember starting making like a post bank where I was doing a photo and then I was writing a caption and doing the strategy for it. Nobody around me also knew. The clients
Right.
also didn't know. The teams didn't know. It was something you just had to figure out on the go. So I don't think
And
at that
maybe
time it was.
these days, I think at least Instagram is also very vocal, and you have more access to
Yeah.
how their algorithm will work
Right.
and stuff like that. And you've got different ways in which, like, if you want to grow Twitter, you have a specific set of things you do. For Insta, it's there. But I don't think back then
Back
there
then, and
was,
it was trial and
yeah,
error. Also, the platforms were learning and creating
right,
the data and the
right.
algorithms for themselves. You run, I think, multiple businesses, but Vital20 Communications is one of them. Chatterpillar is one of them. Can you tell us more about them?
Yeah, so it's three verticals: Vital20, Chatterpillar, and Advertigers. Advertigers is into creative recruitment because that's the problem we were facing. Chatterpillar is a WhatsApp platform, and then Vital20 is a digital and creative agency. And so Vital20 had started out the first, and it still contributes about 65 to 70% to our revenues.
Okay.
And Chatterpillar and Advertigers both are very young verticals. I think just a couple of years since they came into being. So they are still growing, finding their feet.
And what is Chatterpillar when you say WhatsApp services?
So, see, WhatsApp started out as just a messaging platform, right? But I think the way Meta has been proactive about really firming up, the things you can do with WhatsApp is something that businesses also should leverage. And what Meta really wants you to do is sort of build your business around WhatsApp. And sort of WhatsApp becomes your own business app. So you don't need a separate app. Why? Because, initially brands used to just use it for marketing needs. So,
Right.
if I have a database and I'll sort of blast out a message to, let's say, 1 lakh users, and you would hope for some conversions. But along with that, you also have the utility aspect of it. So you can set up chat bots. So let's say on your support number, I can reach out to you, and then, initially you would have needed a calling team if, people could just call on your number. But now you can avoid a lot of that and set up chatbots. So one part of communication is taken care by those chatbots. Then you can also have your own catalogs. You can accept payments. A very good example is Chennai Metro Rail. So if
Okay.
you just send them a hi or a hello, good morning, something, so it'll send you a chatbot. Then you can select your to and fro destination. So let's say I want to go from Andheri to, let's say, Bandra. So a link will open within the WhatsApp interface. So you're not going out to some third app.
Right.
Okay, you pick your stations and then you select whatever number of seats that you want, and then you can make the payment. Or maybe you can sort of use any other app for making payment. That option is also there. And then you will get the ticket on your WhatsApp, and then you just scan the QR code at the station, and you're done. So likewise, there are a lot of things WhatsApp wants you to do just apart from marketing, just not marketing, but let's say we are working with a few e-commerce brands. So what happens is the link, the way you can link it with Shopify really works wonders when it comes to nurturing abandoned carts, or sort of dividing people based on their buying personas. Let's say I buy once in X weeks, right? So I will automatically become a different bucket versus someone who's just gone to the website and not completed the transaction. That will be one bucket. So I think likewise you can really improve your eventual conversions. So that feature is there. I mean, a lot of things that you can do. So basically Chatterpillar is helping businesses use WhatsApp well
Correct.
and make your operations smarter, because it's eventually cost effective. Like, I think initially when it came, a lot of businesses were worried, saying, oh, do we need to pay for every message, right? But when you look at the whole picture, it becomes much more efficient and also cost friendly.
So many people do not understand as clients the need for marketing, different marketing channels, right? They're so stuck with, okay, we need Instagram and we need Facebook, which is why I asked you that how do you do WhatsApp marketing and what do you do? Because brands need to understand that they need to also diversify, and that WhatsApp can be as effective as they could look at an Instagram or a Facebook.
Absolutely.
or
I think
YouTube?
WhatsApp is actually some of the use cases. I think it's been much more effective. Also, I'll tell you the penetration of WhatsApp in smaller places.
Right.
People might not be necessarily very aggressive on social media, but they really want to be aggressive on WhatsApp. So there is this one jeweler in Delhi. On a Sunday morning, I get a call from him, all irritated, saying, "Yeah, your platform is not working." All of that. So we got it sorted in like 15 minutes because it was an issue to do with his card. The payment wasn't going through. But then an hour later, I asked him, saying, I know you. Why were you a little, agitated? And he said, you know what? Just like how people have social media calendars, I have a WhatsApp calendar, and it really impacts my walk-ins. So this is not even an e-commerce business where I'm talking about a digital conversion. I'm saying in a retail setup, WhatsApp, if it can really impact your walk-ins, that's saying a lot about the penetration of the medium itself and how much people use it, right?
Of
Or
course.
how, so, all of us will have Facebook, Insta, YouTube, but the number of times you open WhatsApp, right? A lot of working professionals, I think, on one window, WhatsApp web will always be
Yeah.
open, probably, right? So that's the penetration, and I feel in time to come, it's only going to grow because the focus of WhatsApp is they want to kill SMS. So they've reduced utility pricing, and they've already, I mean, the marketing is already expensive, but reducing utility is when they are directly pitching against SMS, and what they want us to do is just not use it for marketing purpose, but try and build your business around it.
Makes sense. And I think it's so much more effective, especially if you're marketing to tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities, because they are obviously only on WhatsApp the whole time. Tell me, you worked with a lot of major brands like your Vodafone and SBI and Kellogg's and all. So, what kind of marketing have you done for them?
For Allen Career Institute, we launched their digital wing with a Pan India campaign. Then for India Bulls, we were managing their digital. For Kellogg's, we had worked on these print materials that you find at a lot of the stores. But I think Vodafone is the most interesting because that was the time when we were functioning out of a small flat in Borivali,
Okay.
and it was a 4 people team. And for us to crack Vodafone, that was a huge thing because I mean, it obviously O&M was their main agency, and they were working with them, but they needed a couple of agencies to do a lot of work that O&M wasn't able to do,
Okay.
because obviously they were doing some of the bigger works. So for Vodafone, actually what had happened was, so when I'd come back to India, I mean, I didn't have an educational qualification for starting an ad agency. I mean, there isn't one anyway, but so what I had done was, my family had a software business. So I was going with that sales team. I think it started from Surat. So you just enter different retail showrooms and brands and just pitch your services. And then once we had a few brands, then I had shifted to Mumbai. I have a friend who has a 2 BHK. So we sort of had 3 tables, and 3 people were working. And then I got to know Vodafone is looking out.
Oh.
So there was this one, I think, a pretty elderly uncle. I'm missing his name though. But after a lot of meetings, he said, "Okay, we'll let you work on this." And then they took me to another room where you had their legal team. They had a ready 80-page contract, and very stern terms, like, if you miss out on certain deadlines, you will be fined and all of that, because apparently you're harming our brand image and all of that. And at that point in time, there was actually no one. I mean, there was a design studio we were working with. He was Harpal. And then I think apart from that, we just had a couple of people. So I still sort of took the leap of faith, signed all of that, and then we were all in a very jolly mood, saying, "You know what, we've arrived in Mumbai, we've cracked Vodafone and all of that." And then I call up my friend Harpal and I tell him that, we've done this, and he says, "Great, congrats, we should all party and all of that." And then he asks me who's going to do it. So I said, "You're going to do it, right? You are the design studio." And he says, "No, yaar, this person has just left or something, and then we don't have anyone." So then you had to find and build a freelancing team. Apparently, the person who was leading that freelancing team, his name was Moody. So his name was only Moody, right? But then we sort of delivered. So these were certain ad films that they needed. for variety of purposes. Then I think we happened to eventually work also with SBI. They were launching their new interface with Bank of Baroda. I might be missing a few names, but yeah, I think we worked with Sony as well on back-end films. So different scopes, but
Yeah.
I think we've just been fortunate that we've
Yeah.
had the opportunity of working with these
I
brands.
want to go back a little bit because a lot of people that are starting their agencies or their work, they ask me this, that how do you get your first few clients? Like, where do you do your reach out or your cold calling, etc.?
I think the way it can happen now is different from maybe the way it would happen, let's say, 10 years back. I think now we live in a day and age where you can maybe even just start creating content and then, hope that content attracts your initial few leads. But I think back then the best way was to just hit the street and just hope that there used to be days where and there was no team as well, so all that you're selling is just trust and some ideas, right? And so I think the way I had at least worked back then was to pick a road every day and just to sort of
Physically
yeah,
go and
physically
ask them,
cover.
wow.
Yeah, and you would find all kinds of experiences where they would be interested, they would not be interested, they would make you wait, and at times you feel you're so close to closing something, and then they would just say, okay, you know what, there is a bigger agency, or we're
Oh,
not interested in it, or whatever it is. And if you can convert a client, I think then see, the client doesn't know that you don't have a team, but you have to at least present and sort of beef up, right? So you would always tell them that, you know what, we have a copy team, art team, digital team, but your account is so important that I'm only going to service it, right? They also
you
don't know
have
there's
to
no
do
one
that in the
else,
beginning.
right?
I know what you mean.
So I think that's how we got, I think 5, 7, 10 clients, and then one sort of grew in confidence and said, okay, let's move to Mumbai and
Right.
let's maybe try and work with even bigger brands.
For me, I think in the beginning, what I did was just go around asking people that were around me that I knew had businesses or had something, and I would be like, listen, you need social media. You don't know how important it is for your brand. And then
Right.
you get one or two. I think the first ones I got were my friends only, who would be like, okay, like a furniture store or like a book, publisher. So I would, create content for them and all. And then I would go show that work to other
Correct.
people and show the results. Like, see, here's what we did in this budget and we got this result. And now, like, that's how you go for the
Right.
loop, at least back then. But now you obviously have your LinkedIn reach outs, you can call people, you can see what other agencies are working with which brands and fill the gaps,
Absolutely.
etc. But I think in any agency there is always one particular thing that they are known for or they do really well. What would that be for you?
I mean, in the initial phase, you sort of take anything that comes your way. It's only gradually that you realize that you need to sort of build a niche. So what we've done is, in fact, this is a question we ask every business that we work with, and we started out by asking the same to ourselves: how can we be the best agency on earth? Or what can we do to become the best agency on earth? And as it turns out, see, what also happens is, in the initial years, the kind of work that you get, you gradually start building your team aligned to that, right? So we anyway had a few fashion brands, so our writers and designers, they knew how the domain works, what are the peaks, what are the slacks, all of that. So we said, okay, let's focus on this industry, right? And we said, can we become the best agency on earth for a fashion brand? So it took us a lot of time, it took us 2-3 years, but what we did was, in fact, Chatterpillar was born because we wanted to serve those clients.
Okay.
So we had the domain expertise. Then we said, okay, we'll build a WhatsApp platform for our own clients, so that they can nurture leads. Then we realized live sessions work really well, or live commerce works really well. So we've got brands. So Om Jewelers in Bombay, we've been able to sell worth, I think, about 10 crore annually through a channel that's at zero cost, right?
Okay.
So what happens is, you don't really need to invest. Like, if I'm going to give a print ad, you have to pay the agency, you have to pay the publication, all of that. So this is a high ROI channel with no cost that you can set up, and we started finding results with it. So what we did is, we built a curriculum, a training module, a curriculum that when a brand is onboarded with us, we will train them on how to go live. Or if you need professional help, we will find you presenters who can go live on your behalf. But we will define the frequency, we will define the calendar, and we will ensure that we analyze those sessions and we really activate that channel for you. Then we built a backend app like a Shopify, but for fashion brands, because we understood that for them, retention is the key, right? Because these days there is just so much competition that if you just are on an acquisition spree, eventually you will burn out, right?
Yeah.
So you really need to retain clients. So this is a backend app that if I give it to you, it will appear as if it's your brand. If I give it to someone else, it will be their app, right?
Okay.
And as a customer, if I come to you and if you have me download this app, then throughout the year, whether I eat out, whether I shop, whether I watch a movie, whatever it is that I do, I start getting your loyalty points so that I come back to you to redeem the same, right?
Okay.
So what we sort of the 4-5 things we put in place was, we had the domain experience. Then we said, okay, let's build a WhatsApp platform, let's build a live session curriculum, let's give them a backend app. All of that put together, and with good designs and good advertising, we now have a setup which is really efficient for a fashion brand. And just to add the performance marketing aspect of it as well, wherein we've got performance marketing team that knows how the domain functions.
Got it. So you are doing basically giving all the services that a fashion brand would require.
Right.
And then are you replicating it for other sectors?
We want to, because see, what also happens in advertising is, if your team is constantly working on one domain, there's also a certain amount of fatigue that
Yeah.
comes in, right? So now we want to crack another domain.
Okay.
We've also worked extensively in education, so we are in the process of trying to build something like this for them. But I feel the thing that the formula that you need to crack should be one where it doesn't need to be pushy. The business development team, even if they're not really aggressively selling it to you, it should be something that can convince you with the results that we've got for other brands and the concept that they're telling you. So I think that's the idea, that we want to crack something that's sort of something that's a no-brainer for you.
And when you get a brief from a client, then what is the creative process that you and your team follow to deliver the results?
I think different people will have different approaches, but so for me, fortunately or unfortunately, mine is a copy first approach. I think a lot of people have a visual first approach, and probably that's better in advertising because it's a visual medium. So you see something and then you read it. But for someone who has a copy first approach, I think the first thing is you open a tool like Character Counter or an equivalent and just stare at the blank page till you get something. And then maybe there is this one initial germ that you have that is overpowering any other thought. So you sort of write that down, and then as you keep staring at the screen a little more, a few other ideas pop out. And then what I would ideally do is sort of bucket them into different directions. So my one is a very traditional, safe direction for any brand. One is a humor-driven direction. One is sort of, if they're willing to opt for something out of the box, then I have this direction. And then I think one thing that I feel works is to sort of move away from it for a bit. So if I have written something, I'll feel very tempted to share it with someone, but don't share it. Just go out for lunch or whatever it is. Just come back after a couple of hours and you yourself will see flaws in it, or you will be able to just make something crisp and then maybe ready one document that has visual references as well. And I feel two things work. I think with the internal team, I would rather send it to them, not present it to them, because I want them to be very objective. So sometimes you can just know from the kind of reactions that you get on it, or if they pick one out of those 5-7 ideas. But for the client, I would always prefer to present, because that's where you're actually trying to sell an idea. I've seen different people work with different approaches. Like we got one art director who would just hear songs from Mela movie for no reason the whole day, go smoke cigarettes and it'll feel like he's actually not working, right? And he's just looking around, putting his hair in place, stuff like that. But maybe he's just thinking. So
Working, yeah.
for a designer, I think it's because he's just trying to crack that visual, and then he'll give the writer 3 visuals and say, okay, now give me a copy that works for these visuals. So
Right.
I think it really depends on copy first or visual first approach. But and I think at the end of the day, whatever works for someone, like I think Akshay, who is our creative director for the long, like he's also completed 8 years with us. I think for him, tea works really well, and you just leave him alone with a cup of tea, and then he'll come back with something. Maybe so he's an insomniac, so he'll message you something at 3 in the night. So I think different things will work for different people.
Right. But tell me any campaign that you have done that has stood out and got great results.
I think the Allen campaign, I would say, because I think it was a lot of pressure because, it was this time just, I think, freshly out of COVID, where a lot of other digital players, even though they had less pedigree and experience, had really got a lot of funding and stuff like that. I mean, we all know without really naming them. And here was Allen Career Institute that had 3 decades of experience, a lot of results under their belt, but they wanted to now come out with a digital solution that anyway, according to at least them, was better than some of these players, but they had to be positioned well. So I think it was this entire exercise where we said, okay, you know what, how do we position them? And I think after a lot of back and forth and exercises, we said, the others are just your online curriculums, but this is India's favorite career coach, which is just coming online now. So we also wanted to keep their offline business intact, but at the same time try and give them something like a digital push.
So you changed the messaging.
Yeah, and because see, the challenge was I want to compete against some of them, but I also don't want them to lose their offline business. So it went live with India's favorite career coach, now online, and I think even till day happens to be one of our biggest campaigns because it was like a pan India jacket ad, and then coupled with a digital campaign. And huge online performance marketing spends. So I think that would be one of the campaigns. One other campaign that we were able to sort of take viral was for a Surat based brand, Lakshmipati Group, and that was called Janta Army. So this is just during the first wave of COVID.
Okay.
And PM Modi had just announced Vocal for Local, and it was not because he'd announced that we'd conceptualized the campaign. I think this was something that we were working on since a month, because we'd realized that the Indian economy is going to suffer. So the campaign was simple. It was about encouraging people to buy Indian manufactured products.
Correct.
The script was something like कि ये जो जंग है यहाँ पे हमें तलवारें नहीं सुविधाएं उठानी है, हमें सरहद पे नहीं जाना है, दुकानों पे जाना है. And so you have to create a video with any one Indian product that you use, and then tag 3 friends, and that's how we build an army. And that is what we call the Janta Army. And I think that by technical, like the definition of a viral campaign went viral, and so much so that the client considered opening a new business vertical out of that campaign.
Oh.
So I think maybe a couple of campaigns, if you would ask me, these would be the ones that'll come to my mind.
No, but they make sense. And I think good performance. Sometimes something is going to go viral, sometimes you don't. And a lot of people ask me, how do you make a viral content piece? And I was like, you really can't tell. But there are certain type of things that you can do, that at that point, at that platform is going to work well. Like that ingredients are there.
Absolutely. So I think, ever since we've done that campaign, and when we presented to, the leads that we've been getting after it, all of them say that we also want to go viral, right? But, the scale of that campaign was we sort of launched it with the marquee influencers were Abhi and Niu. So they had launched it, and then we'd got an army of 300 micro influencers who had posted that content within their own content within, I think, 10-12 hours.
Okay.
And it was so hectic because we went live at 11 in the night. So from that period till I think about noon in the next day, you had to have 300 pieces of content go out, and each content was curated, so we
Oh,
had to have approval from
check
the
everything.
client, right? And then some of them were on barter model, some of
Hmm.
them were on paid
Paid.
model, so you had to someone had to ensure that they got their sort of whatever was promised to them, or else they'll take it down and then you don't want the
Mad.
campaign. And then emails start coming in, you get positive comments, you get negative comments. I mean, as simple as a few people pointed out that you're talking about Indian products, but the mic that Abhi is using is not Indian, right? So we
Oh.
didn't think that. So all of that
Hmm.
will happen, so you have to battle all of that. You have to know the sentiment, where is it going. Touch wood, thank God, overall it was positive. And then the clients will also have, you have to convince them also that what, this content is fair, it can go out in the best interest of time and all of that. So there are certain things that you can do again, but again, that content has to be actionable as well.
Correct.
So a lot of things which are in your control, some things are
Not
also
in your,
not in your
yeah,
control.
because at some points you can create a campaign you think is going to go viral, but it may not also.
Right.
But there are, like I said, there are some parts that you can do to help it get the kind of
Right.
exposure. Tell me, according to you, what is good advertising? I know you mentioned that it is clarity and creativity, so
Yeah.
can you explain that?
So it's why and how. So clarity is going to answer the question why. Why Maggie? Because we know it's a quick, tasty snack. You know, and how is the creativity aspect of it? So how do I communicate something? So you say, okay, 2 minute noodles. I think even the guy who wrote that knew that I can't cook Maggie just
Two
in 2 minutes,
minutes.
but that's a way in which you present that. I think if you look at a lot of Fevicol ads or a lot of Vodafone Zuzu campaigns. Now, if I talk about the Zuzu campaigns, each one of those ads had a very clear USP associated with them, whether it was the network or the value added services or the pricing. At the same time, the Zuzus in itself were a very highly creative concept, right? So I think what happens is in ads where you only have clarity or it only answers the why aspect of it, they happen to be very informative but boring. And people will probably not remember your ad because there's nothing entertaining that they see in it. And in campaigns where you only have creativity or the how aspect of it, they happen to be very entertaining ads, but people might forget the point. And your product always has to be the hero of that ad, and that apparently it might not be when it's an ad that only has creativity. So good advertising has to marry the two. It has to be entertaining, it has to get you engaged with either humor or emotion or drama. And at the same time, after watching that ad, you cannot forget the product. So the product, the USP has to be at the center of it.
Got it. And how do you know that it's going to work and the client will like it, for example?
Two different questions,
Yeah.
whether client will like it and it's going to work, are but see, when you look at an ad, let's say let's take a few campaigns. When you, let's say, look at the Fevicol ad, and let me mention one specific ad where I think there was this truck full of people. You had, it was probably somewhere in Rajasthan or someplace, and you had, it was an overloaded truck with people, right? And you would feel as a viewer that someone's going to fall down, but no one would. And then you get this shot from the back saying
Fevicol
Fevicol,
Kajor.
right? So it, what it does is, you get out of the ad knowing about Fevicol, or knowing about what Fevicol is going to do, right? Or what it does as a product, as opposed to some of the initial ads that Cred did were very entertaining, right? And were ones that would really stand out in an IPL campaign, and they won on that count. But you would always have these conversations on Twitter saying, what does Cred do?
Correct.
Right? So that cannot happen. So you need to have ads that are very entertaining, but at the same time, when you get out of those ads, you need to know, okay, what is it that it's trying to tell me? And how do you get the client to approve it? I think there is no one answer to that. It's
Tell me a situation where you really had to convince a client to be like, no, this is what we think is good and will work.
So I think we were working with this education brand, and I'll just name them ITM, and we've been working with them since 5 years. Variety of things, different programs, and this the education business is such that if you cannot get them closures in their season, then it's, you've lost the battle anyway, because if this year their intakes are going to be less, it doesn't matter what you do, let's say from August to Jan, if you can't do it from Feb to whatever, May, June. So they were in this peak season and we were doing a lot of things for them. Obviously there was social and performance marketing and print, and I think WhatsApp, a couple of other things as well. And always there is this challenge when you have a well established brand, you will have multiple POCs. So it's just not enough to get it approved from one specific person. You will have 2-3 more layers out there. And it got to a point where they had lost it, saying, what, this campaign, we are not going to, not only that we are not paying you for this, but the expenses that we've incurred on media, we expect you to pay it, because this has not had any results, right? So it was that situation, and we didn't have a lot of time. I mean, we had to turn it around in a month. And fortunately for us, the POC and the director of that curriculum was someone who was really trusting us. So in a similar situation, what we did was we met for a beer, and I told him that, listen, you and I both are going to get screwed if this doesn't work out. Tomorrow morning by 1, we're going to email you all of the creatives for performance, for print, for all of it. I need you to approve it by 1:30. How do you approve it is your lookout, right? Whom do you convince? What do you do is your lookout. And little bit in the good space, he agreed. And but the next day he approved it by 1:15. And I don't know what he did. I think he must have sort of taken it on him, saying, you know what, I really want to go ahead with this. And fortunately, in the next 30 days, we were able to turn it around on multiple fronts in a way that it became our best campaign till date for them.
No way.
So what happens is, sometimes why this relationship with a client is very important is because, see, at times you will have, I mean, more often than not, you will have to listen to them. But you will get this 1 or 2 instances where you can tell him, listen, you know what, I really know this will work. I need you to trust me, and I need you to give me an approval on email.
On email is
On
important.
email, yeah.
No, this is a problem with agencies also, because if you have multiple people approving your campaigns or your work, what happens is everybody has a different mindset and everybody has a different creative eye. So then how do you get through all these people saying that, this is the campaign that I want to do? I have done it based on results. I'll be like, look, this campaign in the past, whether I've done or somebody else has done, has got this. So I will give it as a reference to the other. Unless it's completely out of the box, then they kind of have to trust and put the budgets on it.
Also, I think while there are these multiple people involved, I think in that process, somewhere you forget the TG, the people for whom you're doing that ad. And I have a very interesting anecdote by Piyush Pandey on this. So, he'd said it in one of the interviews, I think to Shantanu. And what he'd said is, when Piyush was young, he'd participated in this recitation competition in his school, and his dad had picked the poem for him. It was the powerful Meera Ka Vishpan, and young Piyush was very pumped up about it, and he went onto the stage and like, Pyala bhara hai vish ka, garal ka, hala halka, and so on he went. And at the end of it, he got a lot of applause, but not the gold medal, because his TG had not understood the poem, right? So a very disappointed Piyush went to his dad and said, I didn't get the gold medal. And his dad said, don't worry. The good thing is, now we know the audience, and now we know कि किसके लिए हमको बोलना है. So the next year arrived. Again, his dad picked a poem for him. Again, Piyush, very pumped up, went onto the stage, recited it, and this time he won the gold. The poem was, इधर भी गधे हैं, उधर भी गधे हैं, जिधर देखो गधे ही गधे हैं. And so the moral of that story is that you have to maybe dumb it down at times, right? You have to do something that is apart from all of these POCs who are working for a brand. You have to come up with something that works for your audience, right? Because in your boardrooms, like I think we are working with this brand that has a lot of presence in tier 2, tier 3 cities, right? So doesn't matter how many people are involved in that boardroom, their background, eventually more than them, everyone has to be aligned to what can work for the TG.
Correct. I also tell the clients this thing that you have to understand who you're making it for. If your audience, there was this client that was working for St. Regis, okay, and they were very hell bound on what they want to present and how the hotel should look in terms of what the hotel wants or the people want. And I had to really get them to be like, your audience is younger on Instagram. They don't think like you, they don't consume content like you. And while you want to show long videos and like really slow videos, that's not what's working on Instagram. So I had to tell them, you have to think about your audience. Think of it as a 25-year-old or a 17-year-old.
Correct. And at times, again, with social media, what also happens is, the people who are making decisions might not understand this, but a lot of brands on Insta now move away from their business and create content that can just get them engagement.
Do you think
Right?
that's right?
I would not completely agree to that. I think there has to be a balance because it all cannot be creativity. There has to be clarity as well. But I would certainly think that not having that is more harmful because, a lot of brands, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday would come out with their USP posts and testimonial posts and, a message from the director, which will probably get 7 likes, 5 would be family members, right? So I think better than that is to maybe just go out there and create content that can get engagement. Ideal would be to have a mix of the two.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Now tell me, there's so much content that is already going out, okay? Now, as a agency for a brand, how do you do something that is going to be different or going to stand out?
So I think, see, you will have to identify the right mix. Correct. I think what you will have to start out with is what is the ethos of the brand, who is the TG, what is it that they really want, right? Let's say if I'm talking about a fashion brand, and I know that, okay, this age bucket, this gender, this place is geographically is their TG. What is it that they are interested in? What kind of content do they consume? Where do they spend their time? There is this very interesting thing where you can sort of relate marketing with wildlife photography. And to answer this question, what I'll just do is I'll draw parallels between the two. So what happens is, as a wildlife photographer, one approach is that you go to the forest and you go randomly in search of a click. So that's random push. So for me, for a brand, when I am just going to randomly go on any platform and just try and spend money on it, that's a random push. But slightly smarter wildlife photographers go wait by a pond because the wildlife is definitely going to come there, sip some water, so you can have your click then. A marketing equivalent of that would be identifying ponds where your customers spend their time on. It could be for a jewelry brand, it could be a TV soap like Anupama, for instance, or it could be a magazine like one that maybe you and I don't even read, right? So, but those are these ponds. Meta is a pond, Google is a pond, events could be a pond, magazines could be a pond, content is a pond. What kind of influencers do they interact with, what kind of Instagram handles do they follow, what kind of content do they consume on YouTube, right? Again, what's their sentiment as well overall when you look at the way they express themselves on a specific platform. But the smartest marketing professionals go build their own pond. By that, what I mean is, if you can create your own YouTube content, your own WhatsApp group, your own webinar series, your own course, people will come and sip water out there. So you definitely have a shot at getting your click. So I'll again give you an example. There is this consultant who I think operates out of Malad, I think. And he's India's one of best consultants in the jewelry e-commerce space. What he does is he's created a few WhatsApp groups. And the amount of knowledge sharing that he does on those groups is such that people want to join just to seek value. So what happens is, on those groups he has a monopoly. This is a very small example, but on those groups he has his monopoly. So when he wants to publicize his services, he has a lot of people coming and sipping water by his pond.
Correct.
Right? Versus him going and advertising at some other place, this is where he has a monopoly. Or for instance, the fact that you have a YouTube channel, right? Or you have a podcast series. So what happens is, this is completely your pond and you have complete control over what is to be promoted, how is it to be promoted, and you have a monopoly here. So when we talk to brands, what we want to do is random push is a no, because you will burn money there. In fact, brands like Zerodha, I think they scaled to, I think, 1.6 crore customers with 30% retention with zero spend on advertising.
Yeah.
And that just affirms Kunal Shah's Delta 4 theory, where he says, if your offering is 4 times better than the current choice, people will talk, and that talk out there is marketing, right? So random push is a no-no. Identify the right pawns. Let's say for me, if Instagram is a pawn, then just go deep down, study what kind of content do people in that TG really consume. And brands that are really willing to be there for the longer haul, I think just try and create your own pond in some way or the other.
I did that exactly for social media Dissect. So I was like, I create my own community instead of
Right.
joining another brand or agency, and then have my own audience. And then I worked very hard to give a lot of free content over the years. And then eventually I could use that whole pond, like you're saying, for a lot of different things, whether it was clients, whether it was hiring also, because I also hire from that same pool of people.
Absolutely. And that's the best thing, but not something that a lot of people are doing, right?
It's very difficult.
Very difficult, very expensive,
Yeah.
time consuming, a lot of effort will be needed. I think there'll be days where one will feel, where is it going, right?
Yeah.
But I think when you eventually are able to create that successfully, I think then there is no going back to some other pond, right? Then
That's true.
this is what I own, and I can just keep growing this.
Yeah.
And for someone, it need not be an elaborate sort of content creation exercise as well. It could just be an Instagram channel. I mean,
Correct.
that's also a pond that you can create where people can come and seek value, right? So for different brands working in different domains, the definition of ponds can keep changing. For an education brand, they could come out with this free counseling online webinar series, probably. That could be a pond, and they keep getting their faculty members and other reputed personalities to participate on that. It could be digital, it could be offline, it could be anything, but just identify that pond.
Pond, and I'm for creating your own pond.
Absolutely.
Because it's a lot of effort in the beginning, because you have to give without getting anything in return. But once you get the returns, it's worth all the work that you put in.
Absolutely. So I think for a brand, what they can do is they can, while they are creating their own pond, and obviously every brand would want immediate results as well. So maybe leveraging the relevant ponds for
Correct.
you,
Correct.
but
Like
not random push.
influencers,
Huh.
for example.
Correct.
Get their audience into your platform. So that's a way.
So waiting by the right ponds then. I think a lot of brands, what they also do is, when it's peak season time, they want to do everything. They want to be everyone. They want to be everything to everyone, right? So what they would do is they would do poll branding, they would do WhatsApp, they would do digital, they would tie up with 10 celebrities, they would have an exhibition at some place. What happens is you're burning a lot of money in that. But if you would just identify, let's say, okay, this is where my customer comes to seek his value, and I'm going to go all out, but here. I
Yeah,
think then
that
that'll-
makes more sense.
And parallelly build your own pond.
Correct. Tell me, as an agency, what do you see in a candidate when you're hiring them?
I've had a lot of diverse opinions on this, but I think what works with us at least, and this is not something that you can sort of judge in an interview. I think it takes time, but integrity. I think that's probably the most important, at least.
What does integrity mean in an agency, in a candidate?
I think just not in an agency, but anywhere, integrity for me would be doing the right thing when no one is watching.
Okay.
And the right thing for the overall good, right? And what happens is eventually people who have high integrity, they stick around with us more often, is something that we've observed. So what happens is, when you have creative professionals, you get people with diverse backgrounds, some people who are, very good at something, but if they don't have high integrity, if there is a miss on the people quotient, right, then they will do wonders in the short run, but maybe not stick around for the long run. Because what happens is relationships of any kind build on compound interest, and what happens is if I can trust you blindly, beyond a point, that's how it'll benefit him and us. I'll give you a couple of examples. So, our CEO or our creative director, the best way for us to lead them is to leave them alone,
Oh.
because we've had 5 years of relation with them. They are high integrity people. We know for a fact that I'm not going to ever be questioning him on did he do the right thing for the organization, right? So that's clear, and now I want to build a relationship on that base.
Got it.
So then I'm probably not going to poke him on smaller things, right? I'm going to let him do. And in fact, whenever we've tried to micromanage them, it's not worked well.
In a
Even art director, for that matter, I think, like I gave you the example of this one guy, he would then invariably stay nights, okay, but he would ensure that the deadlines are not missed. So even though the servicing team is really complaining, saying you know what, he's just looking around, going for a smoke, listening to songs on high volume during the day, if that fellow is really high integrity person, he's not intentionally wasting time, right? It's just him, it's his personality. And that's why a people business is so difficult, because on good days they can get you the moon, and on bad days they can dig up your grave. So
Right. So tell me, in this case, if there is people and there is processes, what would you rely on more?
I think both equally, but I'll identify the people who get an exception from processes. So it's ideally people plus processes that will give you performance. But I think you don't build a business, you build people, and people build businesses. So what happens is, in an agency, you have to identify your superstars. Because an agency is just as good as your creative director, your servicing lead, your art director, and those people, because they are the ones who are going to be in touch with the clients. They are the ones who are going to lend their vision. They are going to say, okay, this works, this does not work. So when you have these superstars, you really need to nurture them, and you need to give them a free hand. But again, people who are high integrity people, right? So if I'm going to question you, saying if I'm not around, will you do the right thing? If that's a question, I can't give you that freedom. I can't just leave you alone, right? But when you have these people whose integrity is intact, you can really leave them alone. But for everyone else, there has to be an SOP. There have to be processes, like some of the processes that we follow. One is that every servicing team member has to send out a morning message to every client, and an evening message. So, in the morning message, you need to communicate what is it that you're going to do today, and what is accomplished is what you tell in the evening, so that a client should not feel कि यार काम नहीं हो रहा है, right? Then you need to have weekly virtual meetings, once in a month in-person meetings. Then you have these red flags on your task management system. Whenever there is a delay, these red flags pop up, right? So you know where the pain point is, and then you define the objectives. Like if a brand is working with us, why are you working with us, right? So you define these KRAs, and you have them on record, saying okay, this brand is with us. Okay, if you want traction on social media, please define it. These are the followers you want, this is the engagement that you want, this is the growth you want on engagement month over month, or the growth in followers month over month, right? So when you define these KRAs, when you have these morning evening messages, weekly meetings, when you have these red flags which are thrown up, you're tracking all of that. That's your processes. But you need to give some of your superstars an exception as well, because if I'm going to micromanage a superstar, he's not going to be a superstar in the first place. So it's a very thin line it's a tightrope you need to walk, wherein you need to leave someone alone, but you also need to not leave someone else alone, right? So but I think eventually it happens when some people start to pop out from the crowd, saying, you know what, this is someone I can really build something with.
Yeah, right. No, I think that even if you do processes in an agency, you have to give the creative freedom to the people to be able to perform really well.
Absolutely.
But where do you learn, or how do you know what processes to follow or to get? Or like, where did you understand that, okay, I need this process in my agency?
By making mistakes.
Okay.
And so the thing about making mistakes is it's okay to make mistakes as long as you're making new ones. because then you can just keep enhancing your SOPs. So I think these are all mistakes that we would have made, wherein we would have onboarded a client and then we would not have been as communicative as maybe the client would have expected us to be. So then that's where the routine of, it's just something that you just close your eyes and do, right? You have to send a morning message by 11, you have to send an evening update. So that's how that piece comes in. Then you grow to a certain scale. You don't, so far you're relying on Microsoft Excel or WhatsApp. Then you realize, okay, you know what, we are missing out on certain tasks. So then you implement a task management tool that can throw up these red flags when there are delays, or that can measure productivity. So then that piece comes in, and then you realize that what, we could have saved a certain account from going, or from sort of discontinuing their services with us, if we'd built a better relation. So then you say, okay, you know what, you have to have in-person meetings, even if that client is somewhere remote, just have once in a quarter, but just go and meet them. So I think by making mistakes, you come to an SOP that works. Plus I feel for two agencies, the same SOP might not work.
Correct.
Because every agency will have a niche. So some agencies are, let's say, more performance marketing agencies, right? For them, you can have lesser SOPs because there is no gray area when it comes to numbers. There's no debate, right? So the numbers are going to talk for themselves. Or for a branding agency, deadlines will be more important. For a digital creative or a 360-degree agency, you will have a different kind of an SOP. So I think you'll have to identify your DNA, the people who are working with you, the people who've stayed back with you, who are moving the ball for you, and then keep everything in mind and maybe build an SOP.
That's interesting, because I always wonder, like, if it's an agency, then how do you set the process? So I was asking for people who are at that stage in their journey. It would really help them. We've spoken a lot about digital and marketing and all. Now I want to get to, like, personally how you think and how you manage and all. So on that front, I wanted to ask you, what is like the most fulfilling part of running an agency?
I think at different points in time, different things have been very fulfilling. I think at the start, cracking a brief, I think, because at that point in time you're working on it yourself, so maybe cracking that brief and then seeing your campaign out there on a hoarding, on print ads, on TV, all of that is something that's really encouraging to you. I think then as you graduate, what happens is, when you see the fact that you are replaceable, I think that's the biggest joy, because that's when you can automate things, right? So today, when we've identified some of our superstars, just the pure joy of them being able to manage a difficult situation and get brand the results that it wants, I think that joy tops everything else, and obviously a positive cash flow.
Of course, as an agency, that's primary. Tell me one thing that you would like to change about this industry.
I think one thing that, this is a little dreamy idea that I have. I don't think if one can change it about this industry, but and it's going to be a little lengthy as an answer. But so my father-in-law is an oncologist, right? So when you go to him, if you have cancer or you don't have cancer.
Okay.
Or if you were to do your blood reports, if you have cholesterol or if you don't. I mean, your cholesterol is at 250. There is no debating that. There is no gray area there. It's white and black, correct? What happens in advertising is there is always gray area. There's very less that's black and white. So hypothetically, if there was an institute or a body, okay, that with the data that we have with AI, I'm sure this is possible in time to come. But if there was a body, if there was a portal that could standardize a few things, okay. So imagine if I were to put the domain. So let's say fashion. I'm going to put in the number of years since which the brand is active. So let's say the brand is active since 10 years, the turnover of the brand, a couple of other factors in. And then if I'm going to punch enter, and that tool is going to tell me, what the length and breadth to what gaining followers is possible or performance marketing is possible, then suddenly for every agency that becomes a guiding light. Right now what happens is, an agency, when it's out there, when it's reputed, maybe the brand is going to just argue less with them. If an agency is younger and you feel, okay, you know what, I can push them a little more, I can just squeeze in a little more out of them, then they'll push them a little more. Or sometimes the brand will come with something like, okay, you know what, I want 1 lakh followers at the end of the year. Okay, there is no way to know what's possible and what's not, or what expectation is correct or what's not. And more often than not, then these agencies, just in order to retain the client, will tell them, you know what, we'll make it happen. And वो ऐसा सोचेंगे कि at least we'll retain the client for 6 months. Okay, we'll just keep telling them, हाँ, it's happening, we've seen some growth, all of that. That doesn't happen in the medical fraternity or in a lot of fraternities, because you have something that's white and black. Okay, this is
Data.
possible. Data. And what's possible and what's not. I cannot go, one of the patients cannot go up to my father-in-law and tell him that, you know what, I need a cure in the next 3 months. It's possible or it's not possible, right? So if there was something, if there was, a lot of agencies are Google partners and Meta whatever certified and stuff like that, but there is no one universal body that is going to dictate and set out these rules saying, this is the playing field. Okay, yes, this brand can gain followers, but maybe 15,000 followers in best case. That will probably make everyone's lives easier.
Hetansh, I really think that you should create this.
Hopefully, I think
Yeah,
with
maybe you
all of-
can actually see if it has an audience and see if the workings are good, because this would be actually helpful for the entire industry.
hopefully,
So maybe
yes.
you can create it for us. Tell me, if you had the chance to work with like a global brand, which one would it be?
I think I would probably look at this from the lens of what communication I've enjoyed the most. And I think it has to be over the last couple of decades. I think it has to be Fevicol. I think really, some of their campaigns, whether, it's humor or it's emotion or it's drama. You can also talk about Feviquick, all of, the ad where you get, the guy puts a little bit of Feviquick and then gets the fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I've been a huge admirer of Piyush Pandey and the work that he's done on Cadbury, on Fevicol, a lot of these brands. And I think if there is one brand, or if there is one thing that I'd like to do, is maybe try and create communication of that nature.
Oh, definitely. I think it can be possible with the work that you are doing. It will build on it. What do you say is like the biggest impact on advertising right now? If you had to tell me like what effort will give you the best result in advertising, what would you say?
So I think what a lot of agencies might consider doing is, now is a time when you have a lot of content creators, you've got AI, you've got smaller agencies that have established. An agency of a certain scale might find it tough. And there will be this temptation to sort of go to AI for a lot of things. But I just feel that you have to, for an agency to deliver best results, you have to maintain a balance between two machines. One is the AI machine and second is the coffee machine. Because what happens is, I'll give you an example. So we were working for a real estate brand, and just as an experiment some months back, we'd gone to ChatGPT. And I just thought maybe on an empty character counter slide, if ChatGPT could give me a good head start, it'll be good, right? So I just punched in the brief, and I think it gave me copies on the lines of, your dream home isn't a place, it's a feeling, and all of that. And while it was a good start, what we collectively felt is that this is not really going to move the ball. This is not going to convince the client, right? So we had to find an alternative machine, and that was the coffee machine, right? To really get those creative juices kicking in. And what I realized is, when humans would work on something, they are able to think of something that's original, something that's fresh, something that packs a punch. Okay, so whether right or wrong is for a different day, but a human can think on the lines of, what's the best real estate in India? Maybe Taj Mahal. And then you could go, if Shah Jahan was hunting a 2 BHK, he would buy from this real estate developer, right? So stuff like that, which could be right or wrong. I mean, it will not be right always. It could be wrong. It could be a little unheard of, right? That's something that a human can do. But at the same time, if you have a client that has 1000 products and wants you to write those descriptions for their e-commerce store, I think ChatGPT
ChatGPT
should
does
do
a
it,
great
right?
job in
Does
that,
a
in
great
those.
job.
Yeah.
So you have to find a balance. Also, what happens is, instead of being afraid of competition from smaller agencies or content creators, I think agencies should leverage that. Because see, what happens is, every few years when cost of execution goes down, the cost of thought goes up.
Okay.
So maybe when we started out on Instagram, you didn't have reels, you had statics, right? Then gradually what happened is, reels was something new that was introduced, and then suddenly, because the format was exciting, every reel you would see. Now in 2025, when the moment you open YouTube, you get YouTube shorts, you have Instagram reels, you have so much video content. Now what video content to see is the question, right? So what's happened is, because the cameras in phones have improved, ring lights have come in, mics have become better, so now everyone is a content creator, right? So that cost has gone
Yeah,
down
cost of entry is very low to
very
become
low.
a content.
So then the cost of thought is what goes up, right? So now,
Quality.
what kind of content do I create? One of the questions that you asked previously, that what is it that the brand should do? Because now suddenly you can do everything, right?
Exactly.
It's not going to cost you to
And
create
there's so
these.
much content already out there.
Exactly. So, whether it's AI, whether it's content creators, whether it's smaller agencies, I think you have to know in what proportion to use what and where to use what, right? So, in product descriptions, I think AI would be a great fit. I think I heard the best description that I heard of ChatGPT is from Javed Akhtar, who said it's the best personal assistant one can get,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
So, you use it like that, and it's great. But if you want to use it to crack a 360-degree campaign idea for a brand, maybe not. Maybe it'll be a little less effective in that. Use content creators, because if suddenly and obviously it'll take a hit on your sort of retainers, but if you can have a content creator go on a daily basis to a place and create that content, you can probably guide him on what to do, and you can probably guide the brand on how to now leverage this content in the best possible manner. So I feel like a mix of all of these should be used.
And Hitansh, if I had to tell you, what is it that you see in the near future for agencies and for brands and for yourself, what would that be?
I think for brands, I feel like I think live commerce is something that I do see it to really deliver results. Maybe in the next 5-7 years or so. So if
Okay.
you were to look at Amazon.in/live, they are live 24/7. So what happens is, you've got these different content creators. So anytime that someone just goes on to that link, across categories, so whether it's apparels, whether it's accessories, whether it's something else, you have at least 3-4 sessions lined up, and one that's going on. It's very similar to what a few years back you would see these ads on TV at maybe late in the night,
Yeah.
12-1, right? So I think it's the same thing coming back. But what happens is, on a live session, you can actually have the opportunity of interacting with your customer, right? There is no other advertising medium that facilitates two-way communication. To an extent, a social media comment would, but it's not live. What happens in a live session is, you're asking me a question, I'm answering it. So Amazon.in is already live 24/7, and I think a lot of brands should start their journey towards going live as much as possible. So I think that's something that's I'm really optimistic about. Also very optimistic about WhatsApp, because more than marketing, I think it's going to have a utility side of it, which is going to be very, very useful for brands. And I feel, as a business, most businesses should think, how can I integrate WhatsApp? Because everyone is on WhatsApp, right? And everyone spends the most time on WhatsApp. So how do I integrate WhatsApp? And I think, going ahead, obviously AI is going to come in. It's going to become easier to create content using AI. Just a few commands, and you'll be able to do what a designer would normally take an hour to do. So I think leverage that, because I think there's no point debating whether it's right or wrong. I think that time is gone.
Yeah, of course.
it's there. So I think
Yeah.
now the debate should be how can I
How
use
do you
it the
use
best.
it the best way? Because there are not a lot of people still know how to use the use Chat GPT or give the proper prompts so that you get the correct results.
Absolutely. So I think that's going to be something that you can focus on. So because every few years there will be a new equilibrium that will come in across industries. So I think for brands and agencies, I think these few things using AI well, maybe live commerce, WhatsApp, I think that probably looks like the way to go.
And I have to close this whole conversation with asking you, where do you see Vital20 go?
I think Vital20, our vision with the agency is that we are not we are ambitious in a different way. So our ambition is not X number of clients or X turnover. I think the ambition is if every brand that's with us, every brand is there with us for a reason. The ambition is if that vision is fulfilled or if their need is fulfilled, that's the best way to grow. So the best way to grow for an agency is not through acquisition, it's through retention,
Yeah.
right? And we will acquire businesses in our journey, but if let's say, and you've got businesses of different type, different scale, different domains with different expectations with you, right? So you've got one brand that is so happy if you are just meeting deadlines with their print ads and with their catalogs and all the designing stuff that they want us to do. And then you've got another brand that's so hell bent on a certain return on ad spend, right? So you have that spectrum. So the ambition is to be able to manage both
Correct.
and retain clients for as long as possible, because this change of AI coming in, content creators coming in, smaller agencies coming in, what it's done is it's made brands become less loyal towards agencies. Suddenly you feel like, okay, you know what, I can get
I
the
can
same
switch.
thing done,
And I can same services at a lesser cost.
lesser cost. But if you've identified their need and you've gone beyond just execution, right? So you're quantifying it, you're saying on day one, why is it that you are with us? Okay. And you want a quantifiable, a measurable answer, whatever it is, whether it's sales, whether it's certain engagement, whether it's just honoring deadlines. So we've got a client that just wants, they have these exhibitions around the year, they will just want us to honor deadlines and that's it. So that's the ambition, right? So I think we want to become an agency that is able to fulfill ambitions of different clients, and I
Clients.
think that's our ambition.
No, that makes sense, because I feel like even for the what agencies are going through right now in terms of lots of people doing the same services at a lesser cost, I feel like that's if I have to compare, it's like a correction in the real estate market, right? Where you will see that, okay, there are switches happening, but eventually only those agencies will last who are able to deliver the results over a long period of time. So while I can get it at a lower cost, will I get the same amount of service? Will I still get the quality that people will understand now in the next coming years? And the ones that stick on the quality of work that they are doing for the long term, those kind of agencies will sustain.
Absolutely.
Okay, but it was great talking to you, Hetansh. Thank you so much for being on Aleena Dissects.
Thank you for
I
having
hope
me.
you had a great time over here.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much for watching another episode of Aleena Dissects. If you have any questions on what we spoke about, please leave it in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.